It was in this estuary right here. Of course, this changes.
Oh yeah, all the time.
I've been down here. We've lived down here as full-time residents or 6-month residents anyway for last 5 years. But we've been coming to St. Augustine since 1985, and we've kayaked. I have a group of people that we kayak salt run, and we've seen oysters harvesting, tink, and taking oysters from the ocean side of Salt Run. What I've noticed in the Matanzas Inlet is a lot of dead shells, and it looks like dead water, at least on the highway side of it. And I've never kayaked over to the other side, over Rattlesnake Island, which should be loaded with oysters there, because very few people get to that.
And in fact, my first foray into gathering oysters was with one of my great uncles, Cecil Carter. He had a home on Robinson Creek, and he would take a john boat and go to the mouth of Robinson Creek, where the water was obviously much cleaner. This was in the 1970s, and he would take a piece of plywood along with him, and he would set it across the boat, and he would wait for the tide to get down low enough that he could get some of the oysters, and he would get 7 or 8 oysters at a time, bring them up into the john boat, place them on the plywood, where he would sort them out and clean them and make sure he had live oysters. Every now and then he would actually eat one, and I watched him do that. And then we would take usually about a half a bushel. We would take those back up to his house, where he would build a fire in a fire pit. He placed a steel grate on top of cement blocks and used damp burlap bags, and we would steam the oysters open. Extent of the harvesting, it was generally done at the mouth of Robinson Creek. Occasionally we would travel a little bit further north. Most of the creeks that were north, Poncho Creek, Indian Creek, they all had some oysters around the mouth, but we never really ventured very far up in the creeks to collect the oysters. We were concerned with the quality of the water even then. I don't remember many mangroves. That is something that's more obvious today. I do remember the Spartina grass was there. It's always been there. A lot of, I guess, what I can remember paying attention to was less about vegetation and more about marine life. In fact, when I was in high school in the early 70s, I had a science project where I collected marine invertebrates out of Robinson Creek, and I had like a life list going, I guess is the best way to describe it. And myself, over probably 10-15 years, began to notice pretty big changes in the marine invertebrates that were living in the creek. You used to be able to find sponges, brittle starfish. Every now and then you would find pockets of mantis shrimp. They seem to prefer certain types of bottom, I guess. And then all kinds of little shrimp, things I can't even remember the names of now. But that's probably the biggest thing I've seen a difference, is that I can't recall seeing sponges anymore.
He had oyster pens that were made out of frame and lath that sat down right at a low water mark. This is before yachts, or yachts that drove big weights. The yachts of those days with the more classic hulls that didn't drag a lot of water with them. So I know he had, I remember several of the bins, I would say they were probably maybe 12, 14 feet long and about 4 feet wide.
And they would just sit in the water?
They sat down just above the wooden tide, so they're covered, at least half the tide, as the oysters would be on the beds. Buckets, like using on shrimp boats and stuff. And kind of wash your oysters before we cull them so they're clean, mostly singles and twos and stuff. And then wash them pretty well before they come back. But when they bring back, like I say, we're all clean oysters. A bushel of oysters then was a bushel of oysters. Salt Run certainly seems to be they grow faster there than anywhere in this area. There's no question about that. And those beds get worked harder than any place else does. No, I saw people, I remember when I was a kid, some of these parties from Jacksonville, and the table would be lined up with bottles of bourbon. And they were eating oysters and drinking bourbon. And they'd go out back and throw up and come back and start eating again. But no, Robinson Creek and Panther Creek were heavily oystered. That whole shoreline was oystered. I mean, you can still get a few oysters along there, along the shoreline, but most of them have been washed up in the edge of the marsh.
It's at the microcosm. It's a pretty cool little model, and at the community, you're doing more for the water just by trying to make a buck. So you got a resource that a person can make a decent living with that has an amazing environmental footprint and forces a big area to stay clean.
People that understand that the river needs shellfish, and they need shellfish from local stocks. Mm-hmm. That's what's important. So we need and I think Noah's focusing on this, every local estuarine community with a shellfish harvesting area should have its own hatchery nursery set up. Even small would be enough to supply the needs of the area.
Exploring avenues to become permitted and or sanctioned to do the kinds of things that have little or no impact. Well, the impact can actually be positive. There's good evidence that shellfish managed waters are cleaner than the waters that went into the tank. So your effluent is actually more positive than your ambient waters. So you got that going for you. And so whatever you can do to do that is positive. And if you can cover all these other bases and produce a viable, saleable crop to fellow shellfishers, that's a win-win. And it doesn't require much facility, and the aesthetics looks just like a little residential pocket. There's nothing fancy, but it's just a matter of being smart in one of the few places that's left to actually do this.
There's a big burst of oyster leases and all in the Guana. Everybody wanted to go to the Guana. That's where the big oysters was.
Do you remember when that was?
Huh?
Do you remember when that was?
I don't know exactly, but back when we got our lease there, so that was probably in 1965 or something like that, back in that time period.
And there were a lot of people.
Oh, yeah, there was leases all over the Guana. I mean, there was all around the dam and everywhere, the sugarts and the saps, the sugarts, the manusies, there was my sister and them. There was several people had leases all around there. And were they closed it down, for made the Boy Scout thing there or whatever. Okay, when they closed that, they closed the water. That's it. We couldn't take no more oysters out there. You leave if you're gonna knock off a little one, it's gonna bust a big one. You leave it on. You know what I mean? You don't tear your big one up or whatever. Ones, twos, and threes. Normally, that's the standard rule. Well, we'd like to put some seed down there at the Guana and raise it up, not legal size. Just get it before legal size, and take it out, put it on the leases. That's what we'd like to do. Mm-hmm. If we could help nourish back to some of the stuff, we'll help. Mm-hmm. Or whatever, There's a lot of people would help.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, a lot of these boys right here, if they'd put their labor in, and I'm telling you, yeah. I know they would. They just don't know what to do. They won't let you do anything. When we oystered all our lives, years and years ago, to survive, we walked every little mud gut, every little creek. We don't even know how. In my mind, I got them made up. I can picture how they made up. We walked up there and got the oysters out of them,
Yeah.
Followed them up, got the clams out of them,